Good morning, everyone. I'm Leona Barr Davenport, President and CEO of the Atlanta Business League, and I'd like to welcome you to our weekly ABL COVID-19 Issues and Opportunities series. This morning, we'll be talking about financial survival tips for tough times. All of us can relate to that. So thank you for dialing in and thank you for being with us. A few tips before we get started. In the chat room, there is an ABL resource guide that you will be able to download. As the presentations take place, please submit your questions in the chat room. Our Q&A will begin at 9:30 a.m. So we're going to go ahead and jump right on in. This morning, we have industry experts who have 95 years in the areas of banking, finance, and auditing. So they are here and they come armed with the expertise that will be able to answer any questions that you have and to just help you navigate this COVID situation is what we'll call it. We have Gretchen Fuller, Milton Jones, and Tamika Stafford. You've seen their names in the announcement that we've sent out. Gretchen owns her own firm, Warner Fuller. Milton Jones is with Peachtree Providence Partners, and Tamika Stafford with BB&T. We're going to go ahead and jump right on in. Tamika is going to kick us off. Thank you so much, Tamika.
It is my pleasure. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. So today we're going to talk more about communication as it pertains to navigating through the COVID-19 dilemma that we find ourselves in. But before we get to communication, first off, we'll have to assess exactly where you stand. What is your financial situation? So assuming that has been done, now the work begins as far as communicating, right? And the purpose of communicating is twofold. One is going to be to inform, and the other is going to be to learn. Owen, can you put the slide up for me, please?
Will do.
So in the part as far as it pertains to informing, the point is, who do you want to inform? Who are you going to tell? Well, first, you want to make sure that you tell your creditors, your bankers, your vendors, suppliers, customers, anyone who has any type of impact on your revenue, inflows or outflows, they need to know. Now, of course, we typically don't like to highlight our vulnerabilities. That's only natural. But you know what? A closed mouth just does not get fed. And so we have to speak up. We have to let people know where we stand. But what do we say? Well, that conversation is going to look different depending on who you're talking to. So if you're speaking to a creditor or a banker or a vendor, well, that's going to be different. You want to let them know your revenue situation, what you'd like for them to do for you as it pertains to your relationship with them, whether that is fee waivers, interest reduction, increases in lines of credit, payment extensions or deferments. You want to make sure that you tell them what you need. Now, when you're talking about these things, especially as it pertains to payment deferrals, please make sure that they are noting on your statement that the payment has truly been extended. You want to see on your next statement that the payment is not due for either 30, 60, 90, or 120 days, whatever you've agreed to. Because if your statement shows that it's due, even though they told you you had a pass, you may have your credit impacted. So you want to make sure that you check your statements to make sure that reflects the extension agreement that you all came to agree on. What else are you telling your customers? Well, now your customers need to know how you're doing business now. It's a new world. Everybody is doing things differently. People are virtual. There are reduced hours. There's limited access to your spaces and your buildings. They need to know that. The last thing you want is for one of your customers to come to your establishment and find that you're closed or you closed 3 hours earlier. So you want to make sure that you communicate that to your customers. When do you do these things? The answer is right now. People need to know, people are looking, people are still buying services and products. Don't assume that they aren't. So you do want to make sure you're communicating this to them right now. Time is of the essence, especially as it pertains to grants and other provisions that are out there. They are not endless funds. they do have a limit. So you want to make sure you're communicating as quickly as possible. Well, then the next thing is why? Why don't they come to you? They know you're having trouble. Well, when it comes to creditors, I'll share with you that we as bankers want to be proactive, and we are calling our clients. But just like your businesses are experiencing reduction in staff because of illnesses or childcare, some of your agencies that you work with, they are too. So therefore, while they are trying to be proactive, they simply can't get to everyone as quickly as we'd like. So therefore, you need to be proactive and reach out and tell them what your situation is and what you need. As for why you want to inform your customers, if you don't inform them, they will go elsewhere and they will find another business to replace you. And a lot of times that may be online. So you want to make sure that you are still there and at least communicating what you're doing with your clients. How do you do that? Well, with creditors, you can do that either by phone, by email, whatever method that you choose. You want to be open and honest and keep good records of your communication. Keep track of who you spoke to, what they said, and what the next steps were, whether they were on your behalf or theirs. Because as you talk to these different agencies and vendors and suppliers, bankers, you're going to forget who you spoke to, what the name was, what date it was, who committed to what. So you want to keep accurate records of that. As far as your customers, how are you engaging with them now? How were you marketing to them before? If you weren't, you'll want to contact the marketing professional. They still are in business and would love your business. But if you want to keep your business out there and in the forefront, especially in this new dynamic, you will want to get with them or at least modify your marketing. And the reason you're doing that is you want to get feedback from them. You want to know what they want. And if you're not sure how to do that, or if you don't have a means to engage with them in that way, anticipate what you would need from your company if you were in their shoes at this moment. For instance, if you owned a cleaning company, of course, now, well, people may be a little reluctant to let you in their homes, right? Not only are they concerned about what you may be bringing in, but it's just people have other priorities. Could you modify your services to offer sanitizing services and strengthening your skill set there? That changes the whole dynamic. And yet now people are wanting you to come in, right? There's a caterer I know that does curbside or delivery for his amazing food because he's trying to keep the revenue generating in his business as well. Be creative. But when you communicate with your clients, they can sometimes be that think tank for you and give you ideas. So now that you've informed the people that you need to let know what's going on, the important thing for you to do too is learn. Learn about their programs. Every single one of them have something going on. Not all are relief programs, some are special programs, but they do have something going on. Whether it's payment extensions, whether it's special relief programs, you want to ask them what they are and find out what you are eligible for. You may not be eligible for everything they have. Find out what they have. See what your eligibility is. And then even if you're not eligible right now, or if they don't have any availability right now, let's say that they've met their required number of applications or the grant pool is exhausted, continue to check in regularly. Everyone's websites are being updated daily because there's so many changes and information flying fast and furious. You want to make sure that you are current on what they are doing and they are updating their website. So just please continually check with the website, see what's happening. And if you have a contact and a relationship with your bank or the agency you're working with, that's even better. But don't neglect the website because sometimes the website might be updated even before the person you deal with is. Feel free to communicate any questions you have in the chat box. We will be here for the rest of the morning till at least 9:30 or so. And I will turn the mic over to Gretchen Fuller, who's going to speak to us about financial tips. Gretchen?
Thank you very much, Tamika. I would like to expand on the point Tamika made around understanding your situation and what do you do about it. Owen, if you could please pull up my spreadsheet, please. So if you haven't already, most of you, if you do have a financial professional assisting you or whether you don't, you should know what your year-end numbers are from 2019. And if you can, you should already know where you are as of January or February 2020, because these are going to be standard questions on any application you complete. And so as far as knowing what do I do now, I have some clients who have completely lost sales immediately. I have others where it's stringing along. And so some of the things that we are advising around preserving cash flow is, first of all, minimize purchases. That sounds easier said than done because you still have to carry on the business. But sometimes there is a little fat in every business. So take a look at where you ended the year and identify if there's programs, if there's softwares that you're not using anymore. Are there things where you can extend supplies? Think about how you can minimize your purchases during this time. Second thing you should do is to set a payment plan with your vendors, including your landlord. Some landlords are able to work with you and some are not. So don't take it personal. Everyone's in this together. If you already know that your building is half empty, then maybe your landlord can't give you any reprieve, but ask the question anyway. Pay minimum amounts on all outstanding credit card debt. If you have credit cards, if you have lines of credits, there are always minimum payments to pay. We always advise to pay more in the event that you need it, but right now, let's stick to the minimum so that we can preserve that cash right now. And if you can't make it at all, to Tamika's point, have that conversation now. Maybe you can get an extension for 30, 60, 90, hopefully more days, but at least ask the question. Don't just choose not to pay without having a conversation with your banker or your financial institution. Avoid maxing out your credit cards or your lines of credit as long as possible so that you can extend that possible reserve for you if you have access to it. And again, manage your automatic payments. Oftentimes in working with some of my clients, we found out that their automatic payments set up for things that they're not even using anymore, that they didn't know they had. So I would start with your bank statement and make sure you understand everything that's on it and why it's there. If you're not using it, get rid of it. If you need to suspend it for 30, 60, 90 days. Even if you think it's something that you use right now, determine if you can live without it for 60, 90 days, just to preserve cash. On the personal side, I'll come back around to the last two. On the personal side, it's the same thing. What you tend to do in your personal life extends into your business life, whether you believe it or not. Again, on the personal side, cut back on expenses during this time. Tamika also mentioned that some people are still buying things. Some people are still doing very well in this market, as opposed to some that aren't. But even if you are doing well now, your income hasn't been cut, I would take advantage of some of these steps in the event that your sales start to decline over time, and to build up reserves. You don't know what's going to happen over the next 6 months to 12 months, actually. Again, ask your credit card companies. I know a lot of banks right now are extending deferment plans, and they also have these set up online. So check the website first because you may not have to call. There's an online process where you can apply for deferment payments automatically. Consolidate your personal credit card debt. If you have 5 and 6 credit cards, figure out how you can consolidate that, whether that's business or personal, if you have the room to do it. If you have a line of credit, move as much as possible to the line of credit if it's available to you. Oftentimes, lines of credit have lower interest rates, and you can manage one payment versus 5 or 6 over a period of time. Mortgage companies are also working with their homeowners and providing deferment on some of their payments. And it depends on the financial institution. Some may defer it forever, some may tack it on to the end of your mortgage. So you just need to ask the question and what options they have for you. And right now, if you haven't started already, develop a budget for your business and for your personal life. Understand what income is coming in, what expenses are going out, and if there's anything that you can manage. Obviously, we want more income than expenses, but if you're upside down, then figure out what you can pause, what other options are made available to you. And finally, monitor your bank accounts. Again, we often find a lot of automatic payments that are on in this new world of online banking and online setting up automatic payments. Pay attention to those. Also pay attention to fraud. Fraud is still prevalent. And I imagine that it may increase during this time. So pay attention to what's happening to all of your accounts, especially your cash accounts. And then I would like to also bring up another point Tamika touched on is get creative. Milton's gonna dive into understanding the stream of going into new options of how to increase your income. And so I would advise that if you have outstanding accounts receivable, call them. Some customers still have money, still have income. So if you have a long list of outstanding accounts receivable, call those clients, let them know your situation, that you need to be paid earlier, you need to be paid now, or work out some payment plan. Again, if you have questions around this topic, put them in the chat room, and we'll be here for questions later. Milton?
Well, thank you very much, Gretchen, and good morning, everyone. Tamika and Gretchen have teed up some very important points, and I hope you all are finding those very helpful. I know I am. One of the things about doing exercises like this is that you're able to share some knowledge, but you're also able to gain some knowledge, and I've gained some already. Hope you all feel the same way. One of the things that I'll talk about first, I'm going to talk about kind of two areas of information. One is around ways to kind of reinvent yourself or kind of reconnect during tough times with your core customers. And the second is some highlights of the CARES Act, which will be covered in a lot more detail next week on a webinar, aimed totally at the CARES Act. There are some basics of just doing business that we sometimes forget in crisis times that become extremely important as we look where we are today. So for example, reach out to your customers. We could talk about communicating with your customers and your vendors, but reach out to your customers, even if it's just to say, hey, how you doing and how you coming through the storm, and make sure they know what you can and can't do. And how can you reinvent? There's a garage that saw its revenues going down, and what they ended up doing was saying, hey, you can come and drop your car off and not talk to anybody, put your keys in the slot, feel safe, walk away, or we'll get you back where you came from, and we'll bring your car back to you. Well, that didn't cost them a whole lot. They did it within a 10-mile radius. It really kind of helped shore up the business that was going down pretty significantly. If you are in business doing whether it's it's importing goods from Asia that relate to clothing, hair, whatever it may be, perhaps that's a channel to leverage in looking at bringing in goods that are prevalent and available in Asia but not here, like masks and that sort of thing. And so just look at ways that you might be able to create a temporary but new product line that can bring you some new sources of revenue. I would say that looking at ways to change your delivery becomes critical. There are sources out there that you can leverage if you're in the business of selling products, and you're worried about people coming to, or you didn't make that list of essential businesses, that you can still operate online. And even if you weren't doing it before, there are ways to set yourself up online that aren't as complicated as you might think. We talked, Gretchen and Tamika talked earlier about formal plans in terms of your cost side, but also look at formal plans down the road in terms of your revenue side. What can you be talking to customers today about that will make them aware that you're still in business and plan to be in business, and that you can share with them to keep them informed. Also, what are some aspects of what you sell that now come to the forefront, but may have otherwise been kind of, not all that important, but come to the forefront in times like this. So, whether it's certain types of insurance, if you're in the insurance business, whether it's certain types of cleaning, as Tamika mentioned earlier, if you're in the janitorial business, whatever the case may be, if you were doing buildings and the buildings are shut down, but now you could convert that business to homes, look at that as well. So think outside the box every way you can around generating revenue. Maybe wasn't important to you when times were great, but now becomes important to you for survival. Now, I'm going to talk briefly about the CARES Act, and here's what I want to say. There are several aspects. Within the CARES Act, the bill signed by, approved by Congress and signed by the president last weekend, the details are still being worked out. And in fact, you probably get 2 or 3 emails a day, if not more, saying, here's what's in the CARES Act. The spirit of the act was to make it possible for businesses to stay in business during these tough times. There are still some issues to be worked out on some of the details, but there are a couple of core elements. One is, PPP, or Paycheck Protection Plan, and that is important to a lot of small businesses because it enables you to to pursue a loan, a large amount of which will be forgiven, the first 8 weeks of which will be forgiven. It's calculated on the basis of your payroll and a formula designed to really keep you from having to lay your whole staff off. And Owen, if you'll put up the piece, there's a piece from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce that's also available in the chat room that Owen's going to put up now around the coronavirus, and we'll talk about that. Particularly, what we'll say is it has several sections. Are you eligible? And there's some pretty good outlines of eligibility. What a lender is going to be looking for, and then how much you can borrow, and how the formulas work. I will say this, and we talked about this, yesterday, and I've talked to a number of bankers. Bankers are still getting ready as to how they're going to handle this. They're in, this legislation came out this weekend. Things like this normally come out over a series of months. The details, the ink's not even dry in some cases. The details are still being worked out. You should still look at your financial statements. You should look at where you stand for businesses, for reasons of business survival anyway, but for purposes of calculating what you might be eligible for through this PPP program. And so at a high level, what's included, and it does get a little questionable in terms of which source you go to, but what's included is payroll cost for the last 12 months, and looking at the average monthly amount. And then some sources say you can add utilities and interest payments to that. Other sources say you don't add them to that, but you can pay them once you calculate what you can borrow. So let's just take the most conservative stand, that it's just payroll. And if it is just payroll, you multiply that by 2.5, and payroll is pretty hard. Salaries and benefits. Go to page 3 on that if you can, Owen. There are things excluded like salaries over $100,000, but it doesn't mean that if you make over 100, you put 0 in. You just put the first 100,000 in and leave the rest out. And sick leave is excluded, as well as compensation around a principal place of residence, if your principal place of residence is outside of the United States. So that calculates the amount helps you calculate the amount you can borrow. What you can use the proceeds for is payroll, health insurance benefits, rent, interest, utilities, and in the first 8 weeks of usage during these next 8 weeks from the day you get the loan, are eligible for forgiveness and likely to be forgiven. So those are the highlights. Like I said, we're going to have a whole call on this next week. But what I would leave you with on the CARES Act is read everything you can get your hands on. Go to your accountant. Go to your lawyer. If you don't have an accountant or a lawyer, go to your. Don't have any one of them, I don't know. But the point is that around your wisdom circle, reach out and then go to sources like U.S. Chamber of Commerce website. Frankly, just Google CARES Act, capital C, capital A, capital R, capital E, capital S, Act, and you're going to find yourself knocked over with information. Just be careful, because the devil is in the details ultimately. The banks are getting ready, but not fully ready to lend yet. But don't wait too late. Get ready. Have everything ready to go. Reach out to your banker or bank that you want to talk with if you don't have a banker. Some banks are doing it online even. So just those would be the highlights. And I can tell you from experience, some of the larger banks, if you're, if you're under, say, $5 million in sales, will send you to their online banking channel, business banking channel, and don't be put off by that. Go to it and figure it out as you can. Reach out for help if you get stuck, but by all means, make sure that you're not missing out on an opportunity. So with that, I think we have time for questions.
Yes, thank you so much, Tamika, Gretchen, and Milton. We will now go to our Q&A. If you have a question, if you've not already typed it into the chat room, please do so right now. Owen, would you give us our first question?
Sure. As far as business owners are concerned, we are eligible to receive unemployment benefits. If so, what are the stipulations or qualifications?
This is Gretchen. From my understanding right now, and I'm not a lawyer, and again, we're going to have 2 lawyers on the call next week. So who ever asked that question, I would advise you to sign up for next week so that we get it straight from the legal side. But my understanding right now is yes, but it's going to depend on the situation. The IRS.gov has a lot of information about that out right now about how to file for unemployment. In particular, for those employers that have employees, if you are putting your staff on unemployment, there is a weekly reporting that is required. So again, I would start with your payroll companies. They also have a lot of this information out there right now. So I would advise you contact your payroll company if you don't have a legal resource. And then also read some of the announcements that have come out by the IRS. They have some great detail out there about how to address this.
Yeah, and there is a good detailed document from Affinity HR Group that and they focus mainly on the kind of payroll side of things. So that might be a place to go, as well as GeorgiaDOL.gov, the Department of Labor.
Okay, the next question. I filled out a long version application, but now I see there is a streamlined one. Are they one in the same?
If this is for the SBA, I'll tell you from my own experience, I've been trying to complete as many of the applications as possible so that I can advise my clients and others. With the SBA, there have been 2 different phases of their application in the original economic injury disaster loan fund. So yes, there may be varying degrees. To Tamika's point, everything is changing daily. So I would just err on the side of caution. Fill out as much as possible. There's always a contact email. When I experienced the same thing, I reached out to the email that was in contact. They responded immediately. And in particular for the case of the SBA, there are 2 different applications, and they're advising people, even if you get declined on the first one, at least come back and reapply for the $10,000 cash advance that they're trying to get into the system. So I'm not sure if it was particular the SBA that you're questioning, but in most instances, I would say fill it out and then respond to an email and ask the question.
Okay, the next question. Do you apply for these loans through SBA or your bank?
So I'll
Go ahead.
go ahead, Milton.
I was going to say.
I'll speak to the banking side of it.
Okay, on what I was referring to initially, you would go on the PPP program, and the speaker can talk about this in a lot more detail. You would go directly to your bank on the emergency disaster loan. That would go directly to SBA.
And Milton is 100% correct with that. The bank is actually going to be the ones to actually process those PPP or CARES Act loans. However, to Milton's point, the banks are not in a position to do so right now since this legislation is so new. We do not have the capability to accept those, but we hope that will change very quickly. In the interim, the EIDL loans, the SBA program, that one is an option. Your banks still have other lending products and special loan programs during this time. So I do recommend you check with your respective financial institution to see what they're offering.
Okay, this is a question to Tamika. I have a second mortgage line of credit on rental property, and in parentheses, single family home I own in Kentucky, what's the mortgage relief that BB&T is providing?
So with any of our mortgage products, we are offering deferment programs where the payments can be deferred. And actually, I can give you the number for that. And I'll put it in the chat box because I'll have to look it up and get it to you, but I'll give you the number for that. And if there is an online portal, I know there's payment deferral for our consumer loans as it pertains to loans and lines of credit. And that can be done online, like Gretchen mentioned. But I will give the 800 number and I will confirm and put in the chat box exactly how you would do that with your second mortgage.
Okay, next question. If I fill out the streamline application, does that mean that I need to fill out the long form version? If so, where is it? Do I have to print it out and mail it in as that is the only option right now?
Again, I'm not sure which loan this is pertaining to. If it's the SBA, that's all done online. And again, I would ask the question, there is an email when you applied, you should have received a confirmation that your application was submitted. And in that email, there is an email address to respond with all questions. So they can verify right away whether or not they received something from you.
Okay, next question. Are the FDIC institutions ready to take the inquiries from us? If not, when will they be?
So again, this is Tamika. We do not have that capacity right now for the CARES Act PPP program, the Payment Protection Program. We do not have the ability to do that right now. No financial institution does. But we do have our own specific loan programs, and the SBA program, the EIDL, the economic, the disaster loan, that one is available, but directly on the SBA website. As to when the PPP program will be available, I do not have an answer for that. I would advise, as Milton and Gretchen both mentioned, stay in touch with your financial institution, your relationship manager, or their website, as they will be updating those daily.
Okay, the last question we have is, please provide recommendations for accountants and financial persons to help with the loan application.
This is Gretchen. Obviously, I'm an accountant, and we've been helping our clients kind of mentor through this and guide them through it. I am more than happy to answer questions. I'll put my email address and my website in the chat room. If you don't have someone, and I'm a believer in professionals understanding your business. My goal is to make sure that we are a fit for you and that we connect and that we can provide the best service to you. If I find that I am not the best fit for you, I will certainly get you connected with some of the other colleagues that I'm aware of. But if there are basic questions, I don't have any problems whatsoever. I will leave you with this though, no matter who you work with, a baseline for any application that you're going to apply for, whether it's a loan or grant or whatever, you need to have your last 3 years of financial statements for your business. You need to have the last 3 years of your tax returns. You need to have the last 3 years of your personal tax returns. And you also need to understand your payroll. Payroll is going to be a big component of this PPP. So you need to have your payroll reports. If you're not paying payroll, you need to understand what distributions you've taken out of the company for yourself. You need to understand if you've paid yourself a 1099, you need to understand what those costs are. These are just general documents that no matter what you apply for are going to be applicable. And you need to have your current financial statements. So if there are any specific questions around that, I'll put my information in the chat, and I'm more to go into detail based on case-by-case situation.
Now, there's something I might mention here to everyone. In several places in the chat, we have put a link that's called ABL Resource Guide link. Now, if you click on that, it will give you a list of all of the documents that we're providing for you. But a part of that, you will see the picture, the photos, and information about each of our speakers. If you'll click on the speaker's company, that's a live link, and that will take you to their respective websites. So if there are 3 live links, and those links are connected to the speakers' companies, click on them, and you'll be able to access their firm's website.
And Owen, if I could step in for a minute, I really highly endorse Gretchen and the great services that she and her company provide. And there are others as well that are members of the league, like Martin Harp-Sifo and others. But and everything Gretchen said is right on in terms of the kind of information you need to start gathering while you're waiting on your bank to get ready. Because once the bell rings, you want to make sure that you got your book bag packed, if you will. And so in that sense, banks will get ready at varying times. It'll happen this week. We didn't even talk about the fact that there are some provisions on individual tax law changes that will get clearer as time goes on that you also want to look at for your own personal tax returns. That'll get talked about more next week, I'm sure. And so, there are provisions that enable you to get some rebates on FICA taxes paid on the employer portion. Just things like that that are important to kind of read into the information and be ready to go, whether it's under the PPP plan or others. And working with a good accountant or lawyer or both will kind of help you be better positioned for that.
That's
And
all
Owen,
the questions we have at this point. There's
Owen, this is Tamika. If I may, I did want to add about the phone number for the mortgage forbearance, simply because some people cannot view the chat box. So I want them to be able to hear the phone number, so that way they can jot that down in case they're not tied in visually. That phone number for mortgage forbearance with BB&T Now Truist is 800-443-1032. Again, that's 800-443-1032. And there is a minimum of 90 days of payment forbearance with BB&T Now Truist Mortgage. So please contact them to get that process started if you're in need. Thank you, Owen.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you. Owen, any more questions?
That's it.
Okay. Thank you all for joining us this morning. And I thank Gretchen Fuller, Milton Jones, and Tamika Stafford for joining us and sharing the information that they have. We will follow up with information regarding our CPAs and accountants who are part of the Atlanta Business League, as well as law firms who may be able to assist you as you actually wade through all of this information. So look to hear from us, and please join us next week. You'll get the information on how to register tomorrow. Have a great day. Thank you all.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye, y'all. Thanks.